So we can't really show up to a millennial topic titled conversation without having someone that's wearing a hat, some crazy shoes, probably going to talk really fast. Hopefully we'll stay on one track, but probably be distracted very easily. My name is Brian Fanzo, better known as iSocial Fans. I am a proud millennial, but I am a pager-wearing millennial. And what I mean by a pager-wearing millennial is that I'm 35 years old, I'm barely a millennial, and we'll talk about the generations in a minute. But for me, when we think about millennials, and the first time it was ever brought to my attention was actually when I got off stage, and someone was actually in tears after I was presenting, hopefully not because of how I was presenting, but she said that she was motivated and inspired, but she's been embarrassed by being labeled a millennial. And I laughed and said, oh, that's nothing that's ever bothered me. Now, this was about 7 years ago. And as we were going over the conversation, and as we were talking about millennials, and this conversation of what a millennial is, I started to really realize that so much of my background, so much of my career, I owe so much of that to what I've learned, the experience that I've gained, but really my ability to not only work with those that are younger than me, but to respect my elders, as well as working with those that are older than me. And so in this conversation, and what we're going to talk about throughout this entire presentation, the focus is not on what year you were born. Because I believe, just like every marketer that's out there, if you're using one piece of data to determine how you evaluate, how you build a campaign, and how you target somebody, your targeting and campaign sucks. One piece of data. Now let's take that one piece of data and take it one step further. It's a piece of data that nobody in this room could control when you were born. And so the idea of us talking about millennials or Gen Z or baby boomers or Gen X, it has context. But we have to think about it more and what does it mean for us as we move forward in marketing, as we start talking about the consumers of the future. And so when I break this down, I don't focus about the year you were born. I rather focus on your ability to embrace change, your understanding and evaluation of collaboration, and where do you put community in your value proposition. And the reason this is important is the future is now. We've heard the concept, the future of work. Well, today, right now, as we're having this conversation, 50% of the workforce is made up of those 35 years old or younger. Now, this is a very interesting change because not only is the workforce changing like we've never seen before, but the amount of change that we're seeing across technology, across business, is happening like we've never, ever imagined. So I don't know if you guys are like me, but I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and every Christmas morning, my dad threw up his VHS camcorder, he threw it over his shoulder, and for those millennials, it was before you could take video on your phone. And he had it over his shoulder, he'd just stand at the top of the stairs, and my dad took a VHS recording of us coming down the stairs, getting all excited about our presents. I don't think we ever watched those videos ever again, and they're probably still somewhere in storage. But that VHS tape, that VHS recorder, was around as the pioneer and as the staple of how we recorded video for 25 plus years. So for 25 years, this one piece of technology defined how video was captured. The Blu-ray DVD did not exist for more than 4 years as the premium source of how we watched video. The rate of change that we're seeing today with technology, the way that technology comes and goes, there are kids today that didn't know Blockbuster was a store. My daughters, I have 3 of them, you'll see pictures in a little bit, they are 7 years old, 5 years old, and 3 years old. When they look at the Apple TV, they believe it is broke because they cannot swipe left or right. I asked my oldest daughter, she's like, I'm teaching her computers, and she said, Daddy, Google this question about Frozen, because of course in my house with 3 daughters, Frozen is a big show in our household. And I said, well, just go ahead and Google it. And I handed her my iPad. She grabbed the Apple TV remote, held down the microphone button, and said, where does Frozen take place? This is my 7-year-old daughter who now looks at Google not by what you put into a computer, but simply what you ask into a remote. My 3-year-old says goodnight to Alexa every single night. The change in technology, the mindset that we have moving forward is drastically different than what we've had in the past. And so for the first time ever, we have 4 generations in the workplace. Now, as a dad, as a millennial, as a dad of Gen Z, my parents, of course, were baby boomers. And one of the things that my dad taught me, especially in marketing and sales, and he owned a candy company, and he sold peanut brittle candy, and always talked to me about the importance of a handshake, the value of experience, the importance of relationships, and that your name, your word, what you stood for is really how you grew a business. People do business with people they like. They sometimes do business with people they have no feeling with. But they will go to bat for you and they will do business for you if they knew who you are. And I thought today, James Corden's presentation on stage, I was literally fist pumping in the back of the arena, not because I wanted to be in carpool karaoke, but because so much of his message was, hey, what's working for us is when I am myself, when I embrace who I am and I put that out there. And the reason that is because today, none of these generations trust a brand. How many people here believe a brand that they know of, their favorite brand, is perfect? How many people here can name a person in their lives or someone you look up to that is perfect? But for so long in marketing, in digital and technology, we've been leveraging these tools to separate ourselves from the community to try to appear to be perfect. And today's generations, they're looking at all of this change, all of this technology, and everything that's going on, and they're saying, wow, I have so many good things going on. But unfortunately, we then label the millennials or the Gen Z the entitled generation. They all want a participation trophy. And just to clarify, if millennials were getting participation trophies, the other generations had to be giving them the participation trophies. Just to clarify. But when you look at things like transparency, you look at things like, oh my goodness, they're stuck in their phone. When you think about how this generation, or how we're labeling a generation of people, I often break things down and ask people, when you work for your company, do you want to make a difference? When you start talking and you're voicing your concerns, do you want to know that you're heard? And so I actually shift the conversation. Rather than focusing about these traits about today in the millennials or what the Gen Zs are doing, let's look at these traits and say, what can we do to take advantage of this type of personality, of this type of persona, of this type of person, so that we ultimately can serve them content and ideally create relationships with them like we've never had to before. One of the things that James Corden said very importantly on stage was when he was bidding for his job on late night, he said that he didn't care about the late night audience. He cared about creating segmented content that could be consumed where people want it, when they want it, like at lunchtime or in sitting in traffic, or maybe they're on the BART system and they want to consume content. Well, guess what? Wouldn't everyone in here, don't we all love the on-demand generation? Does anybody here want to get rid of TiVo and Netflix and watch commercials whenever brands tell us that we should be interrupted? Nobody, not one person wants to go back to that. So when we start labeling a generation that says they want stuff where they want it, when they want it, how they want it, who the hell doesn't? And so we need to start framing this, and I look at this at 2 different types of personalities, 2 different types of consumers. And rather than talking about the year someone was born, let's add some variables, let's add some information, some insights to what we're actually talking about. And I break this down into 2 different spaces. The digital natives versus the digital dinosaurs. And if you look at a digital native, it has nothing to do with the year you were born. I actually am writing a book. The book will be out this fall, called A Millennial Mindset. And in the book, I actually quote someone that's 72 years old. His name's Warren Whitlock. And he has taught me how to podcast. He's taught me the technology required to start launching a podcast. I now have 2 of them. When I look at a digital native and I picture a digital native, I don't picture someone based on the clothing they're wearing, based on the age of them. I picture them as their ability and interest in understanding that digital change is going to change the way we work. I look at them and say, what does community mean to them? And then ultimately, in this new digital world, where does collaboration fit in their workflow and in their life? But there's one problem with this slide. I'm going to talk about it real quick. Is I was working at a data center company. Yes, very sexy technology. That's where everybody wishes they were working in. I worked in cybersecurity for the Department of Defense for 9 years. I left cybersecurity, I went to the data center company. And at my company, my job was to deploy and manage our internal collaboration system, as well as getting the inside employees to connect with customers, clients, and partners. And one of the things that I really figured out was that I was in charge of new hires. So I had the power of every new hire that was brought into our company had to go through my training, had to sit through my course. This was a powerful opportunity because we were hiring 12 new employees a week. So quickly, a team where I was hired, I was employee 256, which the reason I remember that was because I'm a computer geek and because we got a football jersey with our number on the back of it. But I was employee 256, and when I left that company, a little over 2 years later, I was 618 employees. And something that was really cool and really powerful was that I got to train all the new hires and bring all of them on board with my mindset, how to use the tool, the importance of not sending an Excel spreadsheet to 40 people, asking all 40 people to edit it and add their own insights and then reply with it. We instead said, post this on our internal system, everyone can edit it live, and we don't have to go through 42 edits of an Excel spreadsheet. But the value in what I've actually figured out was all of a sudden our rate of people using our internal collaboration system went from 38% to 71%. Now that's a massive jump and people were celebrating, but for me, that meant 29% of people did not find value in this collaboration solution. And the true power of collaboration is allowing everyone to come together to work and that share a common purpose and passion, and we move things forward. What I figured out was the problem with this slide was the same problem with my deployment strategy. I was targeting digital natives or digital dinosaurs, and I was almost putting it towards a verse. And rather than verse digital dinosaurs and digital natives, we have to think of it as say, how can we empower digital natives and digital dinosaurs? Because the true power of collaboration, of digital community, is not in getting a few of us to come together. It's not about getting a 30% open rate on our email newsletter. It's about how do we get the mass majority to come together, share our knowledge, and ultimately move the needle forward. And so when I realized what I was doing wrong was I was building a strategy and implementing features that were targeted either towards the digital natives or towards the digital dinosaurs. And rather than doing that, you need to now understand what are the pain points of a digital native? What are the pain points of a digital dinosaur? Something I'm super excited about with artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is going to allow us, for those that like to use email, and God bless you, I am not an email user. Email is like it's the death of me. I try to check it once a day, and if you're lucky, if you get a reply from me the same day you send an email. Because for me, email is it's about the message, not about having a conversation. But if you are someone that loves email, soon we're going to be able to use artificial intelligence to understand and dissect that individual email and decide if it should be posted to the internal collaboration solution or it should just be sent to that one-to-one relationship. In the company I worked for, I had such a powerful and amazing boss that he actually allowed us to turn off email attachments to the entire company for an entire month. You want to force people to use a collaboration tool, force them, right? Well, that didn't work. Because how do you contact your clients, your customers? What about the people that were not in the office? What about the stuff that you need to access? And something we learned and something that I talk about a lot is that when we're looking at change today is scary. Change today is faster than we've ever imagined before. It's faster than I talk. When we look at change, we have to look at it and say, how do we inspire it? How do we motivate it? And most importantly, how do we teach change across the board? So when you're looking at a digital native, you're looking at a digital dinosaur, don't think about what they can't do or what they don't like doing. Think about how can I educate them to understand and come to my way of thinking. So I break this down into my 3 C's. And to me, this is the 3 C's that define the generations that we're looking at today. You can call it the engagement economy. You can call it the millennial mindset. I don't care what you call it. What I care about is how do we look at change as we move forward? How do we look at building a community? Because the first chapter in my book, the very first chapter, it simply says the future of business is community. The reason this entire event and the reason Marketo is moving forward with engagement over marketing is because engagement starts with conversations that build relationships that ultimately expand a community. And how many people here know the difference between a community and a network? Yes, a couple of people, I see that. So I'm going to clarify that. A community and a network are both extremely important. But a network, much like Facebook or LinkedIn, is you are invited by the people that are in the group. So you have friends of friends. We all see that pop up on Facebook. You have 47 mutual friends, or you have 0 mutual friends. We suggest, and we're like, Facebook drunk? Like, why are they suggesting me that person? But that's because a network is brought together by people inviting people into a group. A community is joined together because of a shared purpose or a common passion. Therefore, when someone leaves a community, the community does not fall apart. You do not lose people in result of that, because people are coming together around a common solution, solving a problem, let's say solving peace in the Middle East. Let's say children's hunger in the United States. I'm on the board for No Kid Hungry. You bring the people together because they share this common purpose and passion, and they're there because they believe in what you're doing. And we can start establishing that from a business perspective, both internally with employee advocacy and employee engagement, and then externally with community, influencer marketing, and creating advocacy programs. This is really where we're going to see the mark change. But the biggest and probably the hardest part to get over is this is change. This is a massive change on how we're doing things. And I call myself a change evangelist, partially because in my life change has happened all the time, every day. It seems chaos is where I fit best. But when I look at change, I don't look at change as something that I've done wrong, rather an opportunity to do something different. And for those that are out there right now, you might be thinking, okay, engagement's great, community's great, okay, millennials, Gen Z, but all I care about is, hey, this is how we've done it for 10 years, and this is how we're moving forward. And I'm not telling you what you've done for the last 10 years is wrong. I'm telling you the way you've done things for the last 10 years will not work for the next 10 years. And so you have to assess with what got you here today that will allow you to change for tomorrow. And part of this comes into a conversation to where the point where, hey, people want to know that they're heard. One of the biggest things that I have brands asking me about, they say, Brian, I have these millennial employees. They always air quote millennials for whatever reason. I have these millennial employees, and they just don't shut up. They email me every day with their ideas, and they won't leave me alone, and they want promoted, and how do I get them to stop? And I'm like, well, let's think about what they really are looking for. They're looking for validation. They're looking to know that what they're doing and working on matters. Have you thought that maybe they're not in the right position, or maybe you haven't figured out the best way for them to communicate with you, or ultimately how you can communicate with them? Because one of the biggest changes that we're seeing today is, unfortunately, the field of dreams is gone. And yes, I'm a millennial that knows what the field of dreams is, and Kevin Costner. But the old way of, if we build it, they will come. If we build a website, people will come to our website. If we have a social media account, people will come to our social media account. Today's digital consumer no longer cares about coming to you. You must go to where they are at. And not only go to where they are at, but you better not bring marketing with you. You better not bring sales with you. You better be part of that conversation, part of that community, long before you make a marketing or sales pitch. And one of the things that's crazy about business, and when I say the future of business is community, is that most businesses, United, did not realize it, that they need a community until they screw up. Target. Because the day that you screw up, the day that you mess up, and guess what? Every brand, every company out there is going to mess up in this digital world where we have Snapchat and Periscope, which we're periscoping here, Facebook Live. We have every possible way that you could get found. And thank God I graduated college in 2003 because Snapchat did not exist. Because who knows what would be exposed out there. But in this world where we're transparent and brands are failing, you have to think about it this way and say, how do I prepare myself? How do I allow people into my business? How do I build a community, invest in my community, so that when I do something wrong, when something goes wrong, or maybe I need the help of my community, I don't even need to ask. Because they've been part of this. They feel empowered throughout this entire journey to where they will go to bat for me. It's an amazing conversation. I've worked with IBM now for a little over 5 years as an influencer, as an advocate, working with Brian Kramer, who spoke before the session before this. And one of the things for me that is always funny to hear is that people will comment back to me on Twitter and they're saying, Brian, why are you defending IBM? How much do they pay you? And I'm like, well, they're currently paying me $0.00. But the reason I come to bat for them, the reason I'm defending them, and for whatever the reason might be about technology, about what their mission and what they're doing, is because I know people at that business. I don't trust the logo. That IBM logo means nothing to me. The idea of what people are doing and just the brand logo or the CEO. But when I picture IBM, I picture 150 employees that have become friends with me, that I have relationships with. And I understand their product roadmap. I understand their pain points. And it's amazing because if you want to create true advocacy, you want to get people to go to bat for you, start embracing your vulnerabilities. Start sharing what you're not good at. If you guys have heard me talk about live video, one of the things that's the most powerful conversation you could possibly have on live video is your ability to say, I don't know. When someone asks you a question on live video and you can say the words, I don't know, it immediately adds validity to what you do know. And last time I checked, it makes you human. Because I asked you earlier about that idea of perfection, and no one believes anyone's perfect. So why are we trying to deliver content and conversations that way? So when you look at the first C in this idea of change, I want you to start thinking of change in not the idea that we've done something wrong for 10 years, rather what we have learned about our customer, our clients, our products are allowing us to change for the future. The second one being collaboration. How many people have heard the old adage, hey, if I hold on to this information and I don't let anyone know what I know, I'm going to get promoted. And although if I get hit by a bus, the company will be screwed, as long as I hold on to this information, I will not get fired. I am now controlling my own destiny. That idea is gone. Collaboration is essentially the foundation of innovation in the future. When you start looking at Elon Musk, you start looking at the cars of the future, you start looking at the technology that Apple and the iPhone is coming out with, the iPhone 8, and I'm a big Apple fanboy to kind of clarify that, and my company is iSocialFans. The I is for iProducts. When you look at these companies, and you look at a company like this, like Marketo, how many times do we hear about partners and our clients and our customers because we're collaborating together to move the needle forward? We will cure cancer because we will not work individually to cure cancer. Ultimately, we will share research. We will start working outside of our boundaries. We will start working outside of our research and development labs to share information. The open API economy is making massive moves. And the reason that is because if I figured out something here and I can share that to make someone else better, together we're all moving in the right direction. And collaboration as a mindset is something the younger generation just gets. They don't even think twice about it. There's nothing to them that is wrong with, hey, I learned this, I'm going to post a YouTube video about it. That's just the way they do it. How do I get this information that I learned to the most amount of people? I had a dream job in cybersecurity. I worked there for 9 years. I got promoted. The day after I got promoted, I decided to leave the company because I said, I love what I'm doing, but this is the war on drugs. If I did something good in cyber, nobody knew about it. If I did something bad, I put our military in harm's length. A drone fell out of the sky. I want to make massive change. I want to reach more people. Because that's kind of the mindset that I approach that. And that's the mindset that today's generation, the younger generation, is built with. So when we start looking at collaboration tools, it's not about the tool. It's about the mindset that says, together we can move the things forward. And then last but not least is community. And I talked about community versus networking. But when I want you to think about community, community isn't just about putting rope around something and saying, hey, this is my Facebook, my private Facebook group, or these are my user community. Community has to be something, it's a two-way street. And for so many brands that are out there, they treat community much like we treated social media a couple years ago. It's a check mark, right? Let's let an intern figure out how to create a community. We'll put a hashtag with it because that's what the cool kids are doing. And we'll start doing it every single week, and we'll let our intern post some content out there. Eventually, when it's big enough, we'll start flooding them with email signups, marketing, and sales to the point where they run away from us and they realize that we really didn't care about community. It was something that we are signing up to check a box. When we look at community, community has to be about something that you embrace in your culture, both internally and externally. I tell every brand, if you want to build a strong influencer program, shouldn't you first start with the ones that are on your payroll, aka your employees, aka the reason your brand is great is because you have great employees? So when you're looking at community, community is not just an external functionality. It is the ability to bring people together with a common purpose, a shared passion, and ultimately make a difference. Now, my friend Drew, he's here in the audience. Drew gave a presentation earlier called Think Like a CMO, and he was talking about most people can only remember 3 things from a presentation. And he gave them 4. And he's a typical overachiever. I'm going to give you 2, so I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to make it easy for you guys to remember what's going on. These are the 2 things that I want you to understand. In today's digital change, in this world we're living in today, perfection is a fairy tale. Nobody cares about perfect content. Nobody wants you to even portray that you're perfect, because I just surveyed this entire audience, and not one person in here said they know of a brand that's perfect or a person that's perfect. We would much rather have content delivered to us at the right time, in real time, in a way that matters to us. When I build content strategies, I have a term called upcycling. And what upcycling simply means is you take one great piece of content and you turn it into multiple different kinds of content because you've already figured out it's great. Now you need to go reach all the different audiences on all the different channels. So take a video, turn it into an infographic, put that on Pinterest. Take that video, take the 10 best sound clips, put it on SlideShare. Take that SlideShare, embed it into a blog post. Take that blog post, turn it into a podcast audio, put it up on SoundCloud. This is taking one great piece of content and getting it out to multiple different areas, rather than focusing on content for content's sake or perfect content. The second piece here is simply control is an illusion. You cannot control your message, you cannot control your conversation, you cannot control what people say about you. Therefore, if you're not worried about control, and you realize that perfection is a fairy tale, you can now get down to the core of what we care about in this digital world, and that is people. And it's an amazing piece for me because I designed this kind of methodology around what I call the 3 T's. And the 3 T's, the order of these 3 T's are actually more important than the 3 T's themselves. The first one is trust, the second one is training, and the third one is technology. Every single solution you deploy, every single change that you make in your organization, everything you do today moving forward, when you're trying to implement change, you're trying to change the way people do their timesheets, you're trying to change and get people to use the internal collaboration solution, you're maybe getting them to change from, let's say, a different company to Marketo. When you're looking at this, most of the time we throw technology at a people problem. It doesn't work. We blame the technology. We go out and buy another piece of technology. We throw it back at that same problem. It doesn't work again. And then we usually fire the guy who was deciding which, or female that was deciding which technology we were using. For so many people and so many brands, when we're looking at change, we start with the technology, and that is wrong. We must first start with establishing trust. And trust is a 2-way street. Trust between you and your employee and your management. Trust that what you are deploying, the solution that you are asking them to use, is the best solution for them. The second one is training. And for those that are out there in training, I'm a big believer in training as a mindset. I never took one course in college for computer science or for cybersecurity. I never took one course in college for data center. I never took one course in college for social media. For me, I went to YouTube University. Because YouTube and a lot of the technologies that are out there today allow us to learn every single day. And I get this question all the time. Brian, if you had to give one advice to every Gen Z, every millennial that's out there, what would that be? And that advice is simply this. Look at every single opportunity you have, every person you talk to, every experience you create, every time you're at the gas station, to the fast food joint, to the fact I'm asking my 7-year-old daughter to look at something on the iPad, as a learning opportunity. Because if you can take every one of those opportunities and figure out, hey, wow, my daughter navigates with her middle finger, not her pointer. I wonder why that is. Let's look at the user interface. Let's understand why we have the apps spread out apart. When you're looking at this change and you're looking at how this works, training is not the responsibility of your company. It's not the responsibility of your boss. It's the responsibility of every individual within a culture. And if you can embrace trust and start establishing that. You can create a culture that empowers training. The technology is the amplifier. The technology allows us to scale. The technology does not band-aid people problems or solutions. And I'm going to throw up this a little, my good friend Bill Murray up there, and I say good friend, and I have no idea, he's never met me. One of the things that scares so many people is that change is scary. I created a podcast called FOMO Fans, which FOMO stands for the fear of missing out, because I was trying to get people to change and embrace my philosophy on, I'm the first one on every new technology, I'm the first one with every new phone, every new device, and I realized that not everyone wants to be the first. Not everyone gives a crap about the new device or the new technology, but we do care about being educated on what's going on, and we want to be able to change at our own pace. So the reason I put this up there is, if you guys know in What About Bob, he's like baby steps to the elevator, baby steps to the stairs, baby steps to what you're doing. We must take baby steps in implementing this change. We must take baby steps in creating a culture that understands collaboration. We also must take baby steps in understanding that if we're evaluating people because of the year they were born, we are missing out on a huge opportunity to truly understand today's consumer. Today's consumer does not think about, hey, I want to know what commercials are going on, unless it's the Super Bowl. Today's consumer looks at how we consume content as we have 3,000 options. My grandfather in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, he was sitting there on his couch and he said, son, I have 3 channels on my TV, but I'm too lazy to get up and I don't own a remote, so I really only have 1 channel. My grandfather had 1 channel to consume content unless his newspaper was brought up to his door. And for those younger, newspaper is something we used to have sent to our door. No. The idea today is that we have plenty of opportunity to consume knowledge and content. We have plenty of opportunity for new technology, new things that are going on. But if we start with understanding the consumer, who they are, what they are about, we will start to embrace and understand that we can truly make a difference by what we're doing. But if we take the approach of the dinosaur, where, let's face it, there's no dinosaurs left last time I checked. We're going to look at change as something bad. We're going to look at collaboration as a way that people are going to steal our knowledge. And we're going to look at community as some buzz keyword that some backwards hat kid with crazy shoes talked about on stage. We must look at change, collaboration, and community and say, what can they do for us? How can we embrace that mindset? How can we empower the digital natives as well as the digital dinosaurs to make a difference, be part of our community, and come together to drive massive change? With that, I'll take some questions. Don't be shy. I was in a couple sessions and no one was asking questions, so I'm pretty good at kind of firing questions out there if you guys don't want to ask questions. If you're looking at brands that today I think are doing a massively good job in this space, start looking at a brand like Marriott Rewards. I don't know if you guys have seen Marriott Rewards, but Marriott Rewards, I grew up with Marriott Rewards because my dad was a big traveler and sales guy, and he loved Marriott Rewards. But when I talked about it with my fellow friends or my fraternity brothers, they were like, why would you just stay at one hotel chain? Like, stay whichever one's the cheapest. And I was like, well, loyalty matters with them, and they take great care of you, and they do. And now they're actually doing some great content on Instagram stories and Periscope, and they're going to where the communities are and having the conversation. Yes, sir, the brave one to ask a question.
All right. Can you talk about the willingness of consumers in the future to share information and the responsibility of companies if they do in fact share information?
Oh, I love this question. So I have a cybersecurity background. So I had the highest civilian security clearance you could get, a TSSCI with a polygraph when I worked for the Department of Defense. And for me, the idea of transparency is extremely powerful. And this idea of privacy and who controls data and what data we share, part of the biggest problem is that a majority of our community, just like those brands that don't realize the power of community, don't understand the risk versus reward until their identity is stolen. Until a brand sells off their credit card or their email address, and all of a sudden they have 300 emails. And so part of this comes down to an education. I think when we're looking at things like terms of service, how many people here read the terms of service every single time they download something? Good, none of you are liars, because if you had raised your hand, you were lying. But part of that comes down to, why don't we redefine what the terms of services are so they're actually legible, they make sense, and people do read them, right? I think part of this comes down to redefining how we bring information to people, because people, today's generation, and really the digital natives of a whole, we're willing to give up our data. And last time, just for everyone that knows this, and this is part of my other presentation, if you're getting something for free today, you're paying with your data. Facebook is free. You give them data on persona and traffic and user-based habits, and they advertise it. If you are using an app that's on your phone and it is free, you are simply paying with your data. But I don't believe a lot of us understand what that means. And if you look at the data that's being used, if it's being used to create a better experience for the consumer, they're going to check that box every single time. But if you're going to be transparent and say, I'm going to use this data, and then as our company grows, we're probably going to sell it off to another part of it. You're like, this idea of trust. And I think that trust has to be a two-way street. I think it starts with education, and a company that's doing it really well is Experian. Experian, the credit company, they do an educational series on live video every single week, and their whole goal is truly education. They don't push a product, they don't talk about their own piece, but for them, the more people that understand the data that you're giving up and the risk it has, the more people that will be looking for a solution like Experian. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Candace. I live in Atlanta, so if you're a part of Marketo, I would love to network with you. First
right, look at that. Smart,
number two, when it comes to training, and how do you motivate people, or what are some methods that you use?
So the first thing you ever do when you're looking at training is you have to answer this question with the user-based community. What's in it for them? We oftentimes start with our training initiative and saying, we want them to learn A, B, C, D, E. These are our initiatives. We're going to do a 4-day training course. And you know what? We're going to give them an American Express gift card when they're done. That's what we tell them, right? Well, does anyone care about an American Express gift card? Is that something that motivates them? So from a training perspective and how we look at training as you're building it out, we have to start and say, what's in it for the user? What are they going to get out of setting up, taking this time and taking this training? Maybe it's going to be a certification. And the craziest part is, if there's a user group that you want to train, one of the easiest ways possible to figure out how to do that, ask them. Simply ask them. We were working with a subset of a group in SAP, the technology company, and one of the things was we wanted to incentivize everybody in SAP to use the SAP internal collaboration solution. Well, at the time, that's the reason I used the $50 gift card, is they were giving a $50 gift card out to everybody. But yet everyone was unique, everybody had a different background, so we surveyed them and said, what would motivate you to use this tool? Some of them said, simply getting a retweet from my boss on Twitter. Some of them said, if I could get a comment from the CEO on LinkedIn, it would make my year. Some of them said, of course, like, buy me a new car, send me on vacation. You have to throw out the extremes on both sides. But I think when you're looking at training, as we're looking at it today, we have to put the onus not only on us that are building the training, but it's on the individual as well. And the biggest piece that this is probably a great way to kind of talk about this as we move forward, is you have to celebrate success. I think the hardest thing for today and change, when something's hard and you have to take risk to get it done, if you're not celebrating that person that did it, why the hell would anyone else take that risk? I was a change agent in my company, and the greatest thing about being a change agent is you can make great things happen one time. And they celebrate you, they put your name up there, you get employee of the month, they promote you into a corner that says, that person did really good, let's not let them do that again, because it cost us a lot of money, they changed the way we're doing everything. And so when you're looking at change and looking at how to do this, you have to start by celebrating those that are doing it. And you have to also understand that there's a lot of times, and this happens in social media across organizations, companies will say, well, Brian, how do we get our company to start sharing on social media about our brand? And one of the great things to say is, do you know if any of your employees are currently sharing about your company on social media? And they're like, oh no, we're a B2B company, because that's always the great excuse. Nobody shares on social media in our company. Wrong. Majority of companies, almost all companies have people sharing. So first of all, it's identifying those that would be great subsets. It's celebrating those that are doing it. And then last but not least, and I think this comes with any big initiative, start small. Start small, learn as you go, scale out. The first employee advocacy, the first influencer program that I worked with on IBM, there was 22 of us. Eventually, I don't know, I think I got up to 400, got up to 1,300. But we started small, you figure out those kinks as you go along, you learn what to build into a program, so that as you're scaling up, it makes more sense across the board. Make sense? Any other questions? Come on, don't be shy. All right, I'll leave you guys with one story and kind of how I wrap my head around this millennial mindset concept for me, about 6 years ago, at that cybersecurity company that I was working at, it was BAE Systems, was the government contractor. I was lucky enough to manage 32 employees. And my 31st employee was my first employee that was younger than I was. So my first 30 employees were not only older than I was, they were more experienced, they understood cybersecurity a little bit more. And so I got to have 32 employees, I got to grow this amazing organization. And for me, so much of what I learned and so much of what this millennial mindset means to me is that when we start labeling people based on things that allow us to bucket people together, it immediately forces two things. It puts us in silos, or it forces people to push back. And so when you're looking at labeling, when you're looking at persona-based marketing or account-based marketing, start looking at it and saying, how do I make something exclusive enough that it's not everyone in the world, but inclusive enough that people understand what makes them part of that group? One of the hardest things that people we're kind of forcing down people's throats is that we're putting people in buckets because we think they belong. And nobody here wants to be labeled. Nobody here wants to be told what to do. And the proof is my 7-year-old daughter. If I tell her what to do, she says no. If I bribe her with candy, she usually says yes. But if I inspire her, if I motivate her, or if I teach her why Daddy wants her to do that, she does it without question. I recommend all of us to think about how do we embrace change, how do we help others look at change, and do it by teaching it, by inspiring it, and hopefully motivating change through our actions. Thank you guys for showing up. I appreciate you guys.
Nice job, man. Well done, dude.
Thanks. Thanks. Thank you.